ANC Deputy Secretary-General Jessie Duarte and Treasurer-General Paul Mashatile will brief the media shortly on the latest developments in the governing party. This follows the meeting of the top 6 officials last night after confirmation from the Hawks of an imminent arrest. Let's get more on this with SABC News political reporter Samkele Maseko. Very good afternoon to you, Samkele. What can we expect from that briefing later?
We're essentially expecting that the officials of the ANC, led by the Deputy Secretary-General Jessie Duarte and Paul Mashatile, would outline the decisions that were taken or recommendations that were taken, because essentially the top 6 can't take any decisions regarding the governing party. They can only recommend, send to the National Working Committee. The National Working Committee then processes and sends it to the National Executive Committee, the NEC of the ANC, with the highest decision-making structure between conferences, which will essentially make a decision or take a decision regarding one of the officials of the African National Congress, who's now essentially going to appear in court on Friday and will hand himself over to the Hawks Specialized Crime Investigations Unit at 10 o'clock in the morning. We do know that the Hawks did write a letter to this particular individual's legal team, in which they collaborated and said that they, instead of having a Hollywood-style arrest, this particular individual, leader of the African National Congress, was largely reported about that there was a pending imminent arrest on him about 2 months ago. That warrant of arrest has now essentially been signed, and he will hand himself over on Friday. The top 6, in the virtue of their meeting they held yesterday evening, discussed this particular matter. The individual implicated, which is also widely reported, we've also mentioned his name yesterday, did present his side of the story to the top 6 yesterday evening, and the Deputy Secretary-General of the ANC, Jessie Duarte, has essentially been tasked by the top 6 to attend the court appearance on Friday, and she will be there and she will be speaking on behalf of the African National Congress on Friday, and is essentially had to deploy Dakota Lekhweti, NEC and NWC member, to go and meet with the American ambassador tomorrow.
All right, Samkele, we've heard from the African National Congress about the step-aside rule. Do you think it's going to apply in this instance, and what can we expect?
In this instance, this individual has on record said that he will never step aside on the virtue of allegations. This is from the horse's mouth. He will never step aside on issues of allegations, or even when he's charged. So it's going to be a conundrum for the ANC, because in KwaZulu-Natal, you had Michael Mabuya-Khulu, the deputy chairperson of the province, who was charged with fraud and corruption. And the ANC in the province, the PEC, then took a decision to bring back Michael Mabuya-Khulu, despite him not having concluded or not having been cleared by any court of law, in saying the ANC has no proper guidelines as yet on the stepping aside rule or decision that was taken at the 54th National Conference of the ANC in 2017. So the ANC is still in the process of drafting these particular guidelines of stepping aside. Even individuals such as Bongani Bongo, who's now been charged with fraud and corruption and money laundering in Mpumalanga, which is the second charge, with that of bribery, which is against Advocate Ntutuzelo Vanara. He now faces 2 charges, and he has not yet stepped aside. He's still the chairperson of the Home Affairs Portfolio Committee. He still attends National Executive Committee meetings of the African National Congress. So the ANC is essentially caught in a quagmire and a conundrum here, where they've got no guidelines on the stepping aside policy, which essentially means this individual, who will appear at the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court on Friday, due to his links as the then Premier of the Free State Province, the then provincial chairperson of the ANC in that province, and then elevated at the 54th National Congress to a very influential position within the ANC's top 6, and effectively the chief executive officer of Luthuli House. You can introduce by yourself who's that particular individual there. So it basically means that he will not step aside, because the ANC has simply no guidelines. It's been 2 years after their conference, and they've essentially been sleeping on the job, instead taking those resolutions which they simply never implement.
Right, Samkele, let's talk about the kind of reporting around this impending arrest and more. You've been given that title by Jessie Duarte of the Lord of the Media, and there's been quite a lot of confusion about how you report this. Normally, people are not named before they appear in court. There has been reporting both on the SABC and other media houses of who this individual is. Talk to us about how those kind of decisions are made about when to name and when not to name, especially as the person has also confirmed that they're aware of this matter and has spoken to you about it.
Essentially for me, Ndinga, here public interest outweighs his personal privacy at this point in time, because he's also come out on record. They also said it in the first instance that there's a pending arrest against the Secretary-General of the African National Congress. His name was named yesterday. The Hawks did say that there's a warrant of arrest out for ANC Magashule yesterday. So it's an issue, if you go back to that issue of the late Minister of Health, Manto Shabalala Msimang, and her health issues, and them being put in the public domain and being put in the front page of the Sunday Times, that issue was sent to court. Public interest outweighed the privacy rights of the late Manto Shabalala Msimang in that instance. Even when we go to court to report on individuals who are implicated in corruption, the issue of public interest outweighs that of those particular individuals who may not be wanting their court cases to be broadcasted. And for instance, if you look at the issue of Vincent Smith as we speak right now, and Angelo Agrizzi, Vincent Smith's legal team has said that once the trial for his fraud and corruption and money laundering begins, they intend on opposing media presence in the broadcasting of that particular case. In other instances, the Oscar Pistorius case, there was also that particular issue of media interest outweighing that of the privacy of Oscar Pistorius in that death of his then girlfriend River Steenkamp. So the issue here of ANC Magashule is a prominent individual, is effectively, if one may put it loosely, the chief executive officer of the governing party. Whatever the ANC implements in government has to be given the green light by Luthuli House. That's where essentially the government of South Africa is being run, and that's where the power relations within the African National Congress lies when it comes to the issue of the union buildings and Luthuli House. So public interest here outweighs that of the Secretary-General of the ANC's privacy, and he has also not done himself any good by having his own people and himself saying that there is a warrant of arrest out there for him, then denying it, then yesterday saying that he's not aware, also confirming that if the story is being done by the Daily Maverick and Peter Louis Maybach, then they're essentially on the money because they always get first-hand information when it relates to his particular allegations of fraud, corruption, and all the malfeasance that has allegedly taken place in the Free State province. So he's not done himself well. Good. He's also said it himself that they've heard about this particular issue of this warrant of arrest. So here, I'm sorry, I'd have to differ with you on the issue of not naming the individual.
Samkele Maseko, SABC News political reporter, giving us an update on that briefing. We will take you to it and update you on what's happening when it does take place. Thanks for your time, Samkele.